Hey, what's up everybody? Kevin here. In this video, I want to share with you guys my top 10 favorite powder snowboards. Over the last few years, I've gotten the chance to ride lots of different boards all over the world. So I wanted to put together a list of my top 10 favorite powder snowboards and share that with you guys. At number 10, we got the LibTech Golden ORCA. I got to ride this board on the peak of Whistler Mountain, and the Golden ORCA is a version of the regular ORCA, but more designed to be a freestyle board that is a twin shape. So pretty unique for powder freeride boards to have a twin shaped board. But this board surprised me. It floated really well in the powder, was stable for landing drops, and was pretty nimble through the trees as well. So that's why it made it onto my top 10 list. Although this board is a twin shape, so I did have to get more onto my back foot when riding through powder, and that's why it's at number 10 and not higher on the list. The number 9 board on my list is the Spring Break Tree Hunter. I got to ride this board on Blackcomb Mountain through some deep snow and trees, and the thing that stood out most about this board is how well it floated through the snow. So it does have like a large nose and tapers down to a smaller tail, helping it to really float effortlessly through the snow. It's also a very light powder board, so making you feel like you're actually like really floating on top of the snow. The reason it's at number 9 and not a bit higher on my list is that I didn't feel like it was the most nimble board. So for riding trees, I like to have a board that's like very nimble and quick turning. And for me, it just didn't feel like that. So for float, it's amazing. For the weight of the board and feeling light was super fun, but I would like a powder board that was a bit more nimble. One thing I have to mention though about Spring Break snowboards is that they do each look like a piece of artwork. So that's one of the things I love about the design, is that it looks like a snowboard you could hang on your wall. Next up, we've got the NITRO POW. And this was a board I took on my very first trip to Japan. And I knew there was gonna be very deep snow and I wanted a snowboard that could handle it. And the NITRO POW did an amazing job. So the NITRO POW, it is a wide board and it does have quite the taper. So a large nose that tapers down into a very small tail, making it float very well through the deep snow. I feel like this board is specifically made for those deep conditions. The reason it's at number 8 and not higher is because it is kind of just like a one-note snowboard. It excels at power riding, but not super great at anything else. So if you just need the one board to do one thing amazingly, the NITRO POW is it. My number 7 board is the BATALEON Surfer. I mainly rode this board on Whistler Mountain, and what stood out to me the most is how smooth this board turns from heel to toe. And that's because of BATALEON's 3BT technology. So the sides of the board towards the tips actually lift up away from the snow, giving it that really cruisy and surfy feeling. So just like the board is named after the surfer, it does give you that feeling. So some amazing technology going into this board for powder riding. And what also takes it to the next level is just the shape with the large nose and big swallowtail, just making it float through the powder so effortlessly. The number 6 board on my list is the NIDECKER MELLOW. And the NIDECKER MELLOW definitely surprised me. It wasn't the board I was expecting with a name like MELLOW. So I mostly rode this board in Revelstoke, BC, Canada, which is a pretty steep and aggressive mountain, and the MELLOW held up amazingly. So through the powder, it was stable and easy to ride, so floated super well at high speeds. But what really impressed me was for drops and for any freestyle stuff I was doing, it actually felt like super stable as well. So I expected a board called MELLOW to maybe not hold up super well on drops, but it really had my back so that when I was landing drops, I didn't feel off balance. I felt like the board definitely had my back. And even for some of the freestyle elements, it just felt super stable and fun up in Revelstoke. So the NIDECKER MELLOW, a board that surprised me, and that's why it's made it pretty high up on my list. All right, so we're into the top 5, and my number 5 board is the BURTON Deep DAZE. So the Burton Deep DAZE was a very unique board by Burton. The year that I had it was the first year it had ever come out, and it had some new technology in it that I'd never heard of before. So it had hydrodynamic channels, which are actual channels in the base of the board, inspired by wakeboarding and surfing, and designed to take snow in from the front and then channel through the board and then out the back. So a very unique technology. I was pretty skeptical at first, but after riding the board for a few days up on Blackcomb Mountain in some powder, I could actually feel the channels working, and I was super impressed. So of all the boards I'd ridden that season, this one definitely stands out as one that's super unique. It did make powder snowboarding feel very fluid and smooth, and it was just like a pleasure to ride in the powder snow. So I really enjoyed this board. That's why it's in my top 5. And I'm really excited to see what new technology comes out in POW boards over the next few years. The number 4 board on my list is the Jones Stormwolf. So this is a board I actually took on a heli trip in Whistler, and I had the choice to bring lots of different boards, but I chose the Jones Stormwolf for a specific reason for this heli trip, and that is because this board just does an amazing job floating in powder, riding at high speeds through the alpine, and just making like alpine riding super fun and exciting and much easier, to be honest. It's just a joy to ride this board. I think what makes this board so unique and so good for alpine riding is the shape. So it's got this quite elongated big nose for helping it to float, with the swallowtail on the back, making it so that you don't really have to get too much onto the back foot. And the side cut on the board too just allows you to make these like big arcing powder turns. And so really amazing board for just doing big wide open turns in the alpine. So for me, this is one of my favorite boards, and I'm super glad I took it up that day on the heli trip in Whistler. My number 3 board, and some people are gonna be surprised by this if you've watched the channel over the years, but it's the LibTech ORCA. And I actually rode this board for 2 seasons. The LibTech ORCA, to me, it's just such an amazing like free ride board. You can take it anywhere from the groomers, even into the park, but in powder, it really excels. So it's a volume shifted board, so it's wide, so you can just ride it through powder, and the float is amazing. It's got a little bit of a taper, but it still has enough of a tail so that you can launch off of like kickers or get some air. And when you're landing, it's still got a ton of stability. So for hard charging, for floating in powder, it just does everything really well. So that's why the LibTech ORCA is on my top 3. I've owned 2 different versions of it, and I'll probably own another version in the future as well. The number 2 board on my list is the Jones Ultra Mind Expander. So I had first heard of the original Mind Expander, and I had lots of friends who rode it who loved the Mind Expander shape for riding in powder. But the one bit of feedback I got was that the original Mind Expander was a bit too soft and not super stable at high speeds. So when Jones released the Ultra Mind Expander, which had camber and was much stiffer, I thought I'd give this board a try, and it turned out to be one of my favorite boards of all time. So the Jones Ultra Mind Expander, it's got that added stiffness so that when you're riding at high speeds, you feel like you could just like charge through anything in the powder. It's got a great powder shape, and it's got Jones's 3D tech in the nose and tail, so that as you're rocking through powder turns, it's really dipping into those turns very smoothly. So the nose and tail have that spoon shape, kind of like a ship, so that you're cruising through the turns and it's dipping very effortlessly. So the Jones Ultra Mind Expander just has an amazing combination of stiffness for control, also that powder and floatability ride that just is the perfect combination. The snowboard that's taking the number 1 spot on my top 10 powder freeride list is the NIDECKER Beta APX. The reason this board is number 1 is because, in my opinion, it has no flaws. It just does everything perfectly. It floats amazingly, it's very nimble for doing quick turns through trees or in the alpine, and it also handles anything at high speed. So you can be charging, and the stability on this board is incredible. And it's one of those boards too that I honestly think just makes you a better rider. So for me, riding this snowboard the last season, it really has improved my own powder and freeride game. I actually had a sponsorship deal with NIDECKER last season that we weren't able to find a deal going forward, so we parted ways business-wise, but I still have to put this board at the #1 spot because it's that good. Absolutely loved it and stoked to recommend it to you guys. All right guys, so that's my top 10 list. If you guys want to check out any of these boards, I'll put links to them down below in the description. It'd be great to hear from you guys in the comments as well. If I missed any boards, if you disagreed with the list, it'd be great to get some feedback from you guys. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button. I'll also put a link here to my Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have fun out there snowboarding, and I'll catch you in the next video soon.